right, so in this one, we are going to implement a Bootstrap modal. What modals are these little pop-ups that allow us to display any type of information on our page. So if we actually scroll down and hit launch demo modal in getbootstrap.com/JavaScript, we can see that the modals, this is exactly what it is. So if I click X, it will close out. If I launch it again, hit close, it will close out. If I actually click to the side of it, it also closes out. So that's kind of cool. And we can use this for actually doing pop-ups, which is very simple. And it's essentially all we would do is launch this modal, and then we would do it in a certain kind of interval for our usage, right? And to do this, we would just run a little bit of JavaScript as well as put the modal inside of our base template so then we can launch it anywhere. So let's go ahead and open up our base template. So base.html, this is where I am. If I scroll now down to the bottom, I'm first going to test out this function that jQuery has, which is called set timeout. So if I, inside of the document is ready function, I'm going to write set timeout. And right here we need a function name. So I'm going to do show modal, and then I'll add a time. So 5,000 would be 5,000 seconds. So since I have this function here, I actually need to create a function for it, or since I have this call here, I need to create the function of show modal. So to do that, you do function show modal, and it's not going to take any parameters. And then we're going to do something here. So I'm just, for now, going to say console log showing. And let's take a look at what that does. So all I did here was declare a function and name it show modal. It's a little bit different than Python, as you see. Python would be def show modal. That's how you would do it in Python, but in jQuery it's really not that much different, but it is slightly different. So we've got function show modal, and now we can check this out. This is a built-in function that's going to allow us to show or run a function, another function, at and in a certain amount of times, and it'll just delay that much time. All right, so if we go back into our project and do a refresh in here. Let's go home, do a refresh here, go to inspect element, go to the console. We see that it says showing, and that was after a few seconds. Granted, I had to take some time to actually go there. So that's kind of cool. So showing is a nice little feature of this, and that itself, the timeout itself should actually run again once we run that actual function, right? So we might want to actually run the timeout multiple times. So if we copy this and paste it in here, this would be in the case of, if you ran the function and you wanted to run it again, this is how you would do it. So every 5 seconds, ideally that function would just repeat itself. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and notice it's saying showing, it says 2 here, and then it's going to say 3, and then so on and so forth. So if we actually did it at 1 second, it will probably go by a little bit faster. So I'm going to remove this set timeout first and put it at 1 second, and refresh, and we've got showing, and it's staying at showing, right? It only shows it one time. So if we want it to be shown multiple times, we would copy this and paste it here, and this is just taking the function within itself, so that's all it's doing. And if we now have it at 1, go back in here and refresh, it's going to go every second now. It's going to actually show us showing, right? So it's actually going to use that modal again. All right, so that means that our timeout and stuff works. This function itself works. So I'm going to change it to 5 seconds. So 10 seconds again would be 10,000. And then if we wanted to do minutes, we would times this by the number of seconds in a minute. 60 seconds. So 60,000 would be a minute. All right, so 5 seconds. And now instead of console log, we want to actually display the modal. So the examples on getbootstrap.com, if we click on a button, the modal will show up. But what we want to do is actually have a function that makes the modal show up. So let's go first off, add the modal in. So we're going to grab this code right here. I'm just going to go ahead and copy it, bring it into our project, into base.html. I'm going to put it right here for now. Actually, better yet, we'll do include modal.html. And we need to create that. So let's go into templates, go to new file, save this as modal.html. So modal.html, save it, paste this in here. All right, cool. So now we've got it separate, which is eventually where we'd want it anyway. We don't want to have all this stuff in our base template if we don't have to. All right, so now that we've got that all set up, we can actually show the modal here. So the modal, we actually will have to eventually add an ID to it. So let's just do that now. So div class modal fade will add ID equals to my modal. Okay, so this is so we can actually grab that one specifically. And this could be marketing modal. Let's actually just call it marketing modal. So this means that we can actually grab the marketing modal specifically and use that. So now, inside of this show modal function, I'm going to grab it with $ and then quotes, hashtag for ID, and then marketing modal. And then we're going to do modal, and we're going to say show. All right, so this is going to show that modal in 5 seconds. So let's refresh in here. And after 5 seconds, it will show up. And then it's going to continue to show up over and over again because of how we actually have it set up. So looks like we might have an error. It's not actually running. So let's actually take a look at our script first. We see we've got marketing modal. Okay, great. And the ID for the marketing modal, I did not save it. So now I have to save it. Notice that in my source here, it says my modal. It does not say marketing modal. So if I refresh now, it says marketing modal. That happens sometimes if you don't save it. As you see, I just did it. But after a few seconds, the modal showed up, which is great. And after a few more seconds, it's going to try and show up again. But it's not going to show up because, well, it doesn't make sense for it to show up again because it's already showing. So instead, let's do toggle. All right, so now that I've got this in here, so every 5 seconds or so, it should actually toggle it. And now if we wait a few more seconds, it's going to toggle as well. And there it goes away. Right, so this is another way that you could do cool little things. But unfortunately, if you have it constantly toggling like that, that might be a nuisance. So we're going to do show, and we're not going to set a timeout again. Right, so I'm not going to have it run again. So basically, if I now run it where I have the marketing show up, and then if I close it, and then after a few more seconds, nothing happens. This is good. So we don't want it to actually show up multiple times. We only want it to show up once. Now, of course, if we go to another page, then after a few seconds, it's going to show up again. And that's because of how we have it set up, right? So that's very similar, and that's because we have it on the base.html. So what I'm actually going to end up doing is we're going to end up putting it to where there's some AJAX call here on show modal, or just some sort of verification, maybe a session type of thing like what we've seen before, to prevent this from constantly being shown. Because if they say something about this session, they dismiss it, or they already entered their email or something like that, we're not going to want to show this modal over and over again. However, if they are not logged in and then they keep going to different pages, then maybe we do want to show it. It's really kind of going to be a little bit more effective to actually have something pop up on them to encourage them to email us or enter their email or something like that. So inside of the modal itself, we will be able to do input, let's say input class equals to form control, and then we'll say type equals to text, and placeholder equals to enter email. And there we go. We save this, go back into Chrome, do a little refresh, and again, give it a little time, allow it to actually show it, and now we see that we have some sort of email here. So this is great. This allows us to collect email addresses, and then what we want to do essentially is collect the email address and then set something in our session basically saying if request session has already entered email, then we're not going to show that modal anymore or run that function at all, this whole thing, because it doesn't make sense. It would be really annoying to nag them constantly to enter their email address, especially if they've already done it. And then on the other side of it, we also want to see if the user is logged in, because if they're logged in, we also don't want to ask them for their email address, because if they logged in, there's a really good chance that we already have their email address. There's no reason for us to bug them with another one. But we might every once in a while want to use a modal to say, hey, like us on Facebook, or hey, tweet something on Twitter. But again, those types of things are they're a little overwhelming sometimes, and they might turn your visitor off, because if you are constantly bombarding them with all these messages, including we've got this slider and then we've got a message up here, if constantly hitting them up with all these different things, then perhaps they leave our site and never come back, right, because of that reason. So we definitely want to use this stuff sparingly, but that being said, we still should know how to do it, so we can do it. All right, so in the next one, we will start to actually set up our function to handle email, or all of the AJAX to handle email and all that. So we'll see you in the next one.